आयोजन में का हिस्सा हैं। और अब आइए सीधे रुख करेंगे विज्ञान भवन का, जहां राष्ट्रपति रामनाथ कोविंद संविधान दिवस समारोह के समापन समारोह में शिरकत कर रहे हैं और उसको संबोधित कर रहे हैं।
Namaskar, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Chief Justice of India and the judges of the Supreme Court, a very warm welcome to the valedictory function of the Constitution Day celebrations. We are honored by the gracious presence of the Honorable President of India, Shri Ramnath Kovind sir. We would also like to welcome the Honorable Chief Justice of India, Shri Justice N.V. Ramanna, the Honorable Minister of Law and Justice, Shri Kiran Rijiju, the Honorable Shri Justice U. Lalit, Judge, Supreme Court of India, Honorable Shri Justice A.M. Khanvilkar, Judge, Supreme Court of India, Honorable Dr. Justice D.Y. Chandrachud, Judge, Supreme Court of India, and Honorable Shri Justice L. Nageshwara Rao, Judge, Supreme Court of India. May I request Honorable Shri Justice A.M. Khanvilkar to render the welcome address.
Warm greetings to one and all present in this august gathering. It is my proud privilege to welcome our revered Honorable President of India, Shri Ramnath Kovind, and profusely thank him for having accepted invitation to grace the valedictory function for commemorating the 72nd Constitution Day, despite busy schedule. Honorable President, we acknowledge your emotional bonding with the Supreme Court of India, where you actively practiced as a lawyer before adopting the highest constitutional offices, first as the Governor of Bihar and now as the President of India. You have reached the pinnacle because of your hard work, sincerity, and humility. I am reminded of the inspirational quote of Bharat Ratna Dr. Bhimrao Ramji Ambedkar. He said, and I quote, "A great man is different from an eminent one in that he is ready to be the servant of the society," unquote. Honorable President, you epitomize the great man pursued by Dr. Ambedkar. We warmly welcome you, sir. Honorable Chief Justice of India, Shri Justice N.V. Ramanna, Honorable Union Minister of Law and Justice, Shri Kiran Rijiju, we thank you for your gracious presence on this occasion. My esteemed brother judges on the dais, Shri Justice Uday Umesh Lalit, Dr. Justice Dhananjay Yashwant Chandrachud, and Shri Justice L. Nageshwar Rao. Brother and sister judges of the Supreme Court, the Chief Justices and judges of the High Courts, former judges of the Supreme Court of India, learned Attorney General for India, Shri K.K. Venugopal, learned Solicitor General of India, Shri Tushar Mehta, and other law officers. Chairman, Bar Council of India, Shri Manan Kumar Mishra, President of the Supreme Court Bar Association, Shri Vikas Singh, Senior Advocate and other office bearers, President of the Supreme Court Advocates on Record Association, Shri Shivaji M. Zadav and other office bearers, senior advocates and other members of the Supreme Court Bar Association, Secretary General of the Supreme Court of India, Sri Virender Kumar Bansal, and other officers in the Supreme Court Registry, friends from print and electronic media, all other dignitaries of the dais, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you all to the valedictory function of the 72nd Constitution Day, also celebrated as National Law Day or Samvidhan Divas. This is an occasion to revisit the roaring success of the Indian Constitution while pledging our unflinching commitment for justice, liberty, equality, fraternity, and other constitutional values and goals. The Constitution of India, in rather simplistic terms, is the supreme law of India. The preamble of the Constitution is the beacon of hope, a hope of unpolluted justice, social, economic, and political. That is the cornerstone of our democracy. The concept of justice can be traced back to the Vedic period. Nyaya Sutras is an ancient Indian Sanskrit text composed by Aksapada Gautama between 6th century BCE and 2nd century CE about rules of reason, logic, epistemology, which is pramana, and metaphysics. Dharma is yet another ancient tenet about individual's duty to be fulfilled by observance of customs or law, which essentially fits into the expanse of Article 51A of the Constitution dealing with fundamental duties. Our Constitution is a perfect example of our ethos of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. In welcoming the dignitaries on and off the dais lies a sense of pride, since we are all collectively protectors of the Constitution of India. We all perceive the Constitution of India as a marvel like no other and futuristic. By and large, most of us have remained focused mainly on the common law system of English law. We have very little exposure to the metaphysical concepts elucidated in our ancient texts. If I may say so, after 7 decades of independence, we have made commendable progress on all fronts, including have traveled to the Mars. But our common law legal system has remained unchanged. It is time that we must evolve mechanism to not only focus on quality justice, but also have the wherewithal to deal with overflowing dockets. Presently, the approach is common to cases involving low stakes, say, claim of rupees 1 lakh, or for that matter, claim of rupees 1 lakh crore, and including affecting development of the nation. This approach seems to be unequal. The impression gaining ground is not only about clogging of dockets, but also bordering on tattered legal system unable to deliver justice within reasonable time. We need to rationalize and also prioritize the case management apparatus. For introducing change, the bar, the bench, and the lawmakers must seriously ponder, and I dare say it is time that we revisit our own rich history and endeavor to indigenize our contemporary legal system, to make it cost-effective and accessible to all, and as Mahatma Gandhi said, to wipe every tear from every eye. This welcome address will not be complete without recalling the celebrated quote of Dr. Ambedkar. I am conscious that you may have read and heard this quote very often, including in the presentations given by the dignitaries yesterday evening. Nevertheless, I am tempted to reiterate the same, and I quote, "However good a constitution may be, if those who are implementing it are not good, it will prove to be bad. However bad a constitution may be, if those implementing are good, it will prove to be good," unquote. He then enunciated on what democracy means. He said, and I quote, "Democracy is not merely a form of government. It is primarily a mode of associated living, of conjoint communicated experience. It is essentially an attitude of respect and reverence towards fellow men," unquote. Dr. Ambedkar gave 3 warnings in his final address in the Constituent Assembly on 25th November 1949. First, that Indians should not be content with political democracy, as inequality, hierarchy, and feudalism were still embedded in Indian society. He said, and I quote, "If we continue to deny equality for long, we will do so only by putting our political democracy in peril," unquote. His second warning was, and I quote, "Bhakti in religion may be a road to the salvation of the soul, but in politics, bhakti or hero worship is a sure road to degradation and to eventual dictatorship," unquote. The third warning was about the future regarding the place of popular protest in a democracy. It is more relevant today. He said, and I quote, "We must hold fast to constitutional methods of achieving our social and economic objectives. It means we must abandon the bloody methods of revolution. It means that we must abandon the method of civil disobedience, non-cooperation, and satyagraha," unquote. He went on to observe further as follows, and I quote, "But where constitutional methods are open, there can be no justification for these unconstitutional methods. These methods are nothing but the grammar of anarchy, and the sooner they are abandoned, the better for us," unquote. As we are celebrating this 72nd Constitution Day, we as the legal fraternity need to recognize our collective responsibility to not only interpret the Constitution, but also to ensure its effective and meaningful implementation in line with the constitutional goals to all without justice to all without any discrimination and abide by the tenets of fraternity. We need to thank our founding fathers for having given us a living constitution, which is ever evolving and flexible enough to cater to the needs of the great country full of diversity of cultures and heritage. With this reminiscence, I wish to conclude by welcoming you all and extend my warm greetings for being here on this august occasion. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir. May I now request the Honorable Minister of Law and Justice, Shri Kiren Rijiju, to share his thoughts with the audience.
Honorable President of India, Sri Ramnath Kovind ji, Honorable Sri Justice N.V. Ramanna, Chief Justice of India, Honorable Justice U.U. Lalit, Judge Supreme Court of India, Honorable Sri Justice A.M. Khanvilkar, Judge Supreme Court of India, Honorable Sri Justice D.Y. Chandrachud, Judge Supreme Court of India, Honorable Sri Justice L. Nageshwar Rao, Judge Supreme Court of India, Honorable Judges of the Supreme Court of India, my colleague Professor S.P. Singh Baghel, Minister of State for Law and Justice, Honorable Chief Justices and the Judges of the High Courts, Learned Attorney General K.K. Venugopal, Solicitor General of India, Sri Tushar Mehta, President of the Bar Council of India, Manan Mishra ji, President Supreme Court Bar Association, Vikas Singh ji, senior law officers, advocates, paralegal volunteers, other functionaries, students from law colleges, friends from media, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed a pleasure to address the valedictory session of the Constitution Day celebrations organized by the Supreme Court of India. Here we have a galaxy of honorable judges representing Supreme Court of India and the High Courts and other eminent jurists. Thank you all for your participation in the Constitution Day celebrations. I have no doubt about the high standards of the deliberations and its impact on resolving contemporary problems through legal interventions. The deliberations in the past 2 days, I'm sure, will go a long way in enriching jurisprudence. As I'm informed, the deliberation today was very, very fruitful and very engaging also. As I had informed yesterday about the launch of online course on Constitution by the Ministry of Law and Justice, and I'm happy to share, on the first day itself, around 12,000 people have registered for the course. And right now, when I'm speaking to you, 1,100 participants are watching the course-related videos. The rights mentioned in the preamble of the Constitution start with the word justice. It shows that the framers of the Constitution prioritized justice delivery to the citizens of the country. I'm happy that the government is making all-out efforts to bring justice to the doorsteps of the citizens through Lok Adalats, Tele-law, alternative dispute resolution, as ADR is a priority area for the government. The Government of India has been taking various policy initiatives for promotion and strengthening of ADR mechanism through amendments in the existing laws and by enacting new laws for facilitating quick disposal of disputes outside of traditional court system. As a continuation of this exercise, bringing a stand-alone law on mediation is under consideration. Ladies and gentlemen, on this occasion, I would like to delve upon the concerns of various sections of the society about pendency of cases in different courts, which has been discussed in several forums time and again. Adequacy of judicial infrastructure is critical for reduction of pendency and backlog of cases in the courts. I have taken note of the suggestions made yesterday by the Honorable Chief Justice of India about the need for giving trust on judicial infrastructure. In this context, I would like to inform that the government has already approved continuation of the centrally sponsored scheme for development of infrastructure facilities for the judiciary at a cost of 9,000 crores. The present government is sensitive to the needs of providing well-equipped judicial infrastructure to judiciary to facilitate administration of justice in a manner that allows easy and timely delivery of justice to all. Government under the leadership of Honorable Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi ji, is making active efforts to strengthen the justice delivery system. The robust NGDJ database has been lauded by the World Bank as an innovative tool of seamless and hassle-free generation of case management reports, enhancing ease of doing business in the country. Government is also committed to investing maximum possible resources for building the next generation quality infrastructure so that they develop into engines of economic growth. The role of judiciary in the adjudication of infrastructure disputes and keeping the larger national interest in mind is crucial for the flow of developmental trajectory and overall project cost. Since courts in India are already undergoing a transformational change by going digital, an emerging domain of science called artificial intelligence may help in surprising ways to ensure sustainable justice delivery and reduce the backlog of pending cases. Artificial intelligence can help in implementing court management tools like case flow management, case management clearance rates, online informations of case laws, and automated algorithm-based support system, which can all add to the efficiency of the judicial functioning. Of course, trained machines, howsoever intelligent, cannot replace human judges. Nevertheless, they may assist the judges in the decision-making process by giving calculated and unbiased opinions. Synchronization of artificial intelligence with human wisdom can help bring speed to delivery of justice. The contribution of judiciary would not be complete without mentioning the contribution of the bar, which is one of the pillars on which the edifice of the justice stands. The bar, being an integral component of the architectural framework of justice delivery, it is as much the duty of the bar to exemplify the organic link between law, truth, and social welfare. Lawyers have a social obligation to assist the courts in enhancing access of justice delivery system. Many lawyers are known to provide assistance to poor and underprivileged clients without seeking professional fees. While such individual examples are laudable, the time is quite appropriate to search for an appropriate model for institutionalized dispensation of pro bono legal services across the country. In the fast-changing world, India is scaling new heights and creating new definitions of success. Let us continue to nurture the values that inspire our Constitution and find solutions to many challenges facing us. Today is a very special day as Rashtrapati Ji is with us. Taking advantage of the presence of Rashtrapati Ji, Honorable Chief Justice of India, and all the learned judges of the Supreme Court, Chief Justice of High Courts, judges, and the jurists, I want to say something which is purely from my heart. I don't want to create debate between fundamental duties and fundamental rights. But we must evaluate on this occasion of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav how much we have progressed as a nation. I come from a very, very humble background, from a village, and I could connect my village with road only after I became member of parliament. Coming from a very, very remote area of a country, I never knew about fundamental rights. I grew up with the concept of fundamental duties. If you see a soldier stand on the remote border or somewhere in the isolated territory of the country, he will not think about his fundamental rights, but he will always think about his fundamental duties. As I moved from village to cities, I started learning about the fundamental rights. ये मैं जैसे कहा कि एक मौलिक अधिकार और मौलिक कर्तव्य में कोई बहस छेड़ने का कोई विषय नहीं है, लेकिन ये सोचने का विषय है। आदमी जितना आगे बढ़ता है, शहरों की ओर चलता है, वो अपने राइट्स के बारे में ज़्यादा सोचता है और ज़्यादा जानकारी होता है। आज़ादी का अमृत महोत्सव में हम जब एक कसम खा रहे हैं कि हमारा देश को एक महान देश बनाएंगे, तो महान देश हम अपना मौलिक अधिकार और मौलिक कर्तव्य को बीच में ला करके हम नहीं बनाना चाहते, बल्कि दोनों को एक पटरी में रख करके आगे चलेंगे तो हम इस देश को महान बना सकते हैं। मैंने ऐसा भी देखा है कि अपना अधिकार को प्राप्त करने के चक्कर में दूसरे का अधिकार को भूल जाते हैं और साथ साथ अपने कर्तव्य को भी भूल जाते हैं। ऐसा स्थिति तो हम नहीं देख सकते हैं कि सरकार या कोर्ट जब कोई निर्णय करता है, हम सब जानते हैं सुप्रीम कोर्ट जब निर्णय करता है वो भी लॉ ऑफ द लैंड है, और पार्लियामेंट और असेंबली कोई बिल पास करता है वो भी लॉ ऑफ द लैंड बनता है। ऐसा नौबत हम कैसे देख सकते हैं कि सुप्रीम कोर्ट या हाई कोर्ट या असेंबली पार्लियामेंट कानून पारित कर दे, फिर भी लागू करने में अगर मुसीबत होता है तो हम सबको मिलकर के सोचना होगा, चाहे वो लेजिस्लेचर हो, चाहे वो जुडिशरी हो, चाहे एग्जीक्यूटिव हो, या समाज के हर अंग जो भी है, सोचना होगा। क्योंकि संविधान से हम चल रहे हैं और संविधान से देश चल रहा है। अब 75 वर्ष पूरा होने वाला है। संविधान ने इस देश को किस रूप में आगे ले गए हैं, इसको भी आंकलन करने का आवश्यकता है। मैं एज ए मेंबर ऑफ पार्लियामेंट जब पार्टिसिपेट करता हूँ पार्लियामेंट के डिस्कशन में, तो मैं सोचता हूँ कि मेरे जो कॉन्स्टिट्यूंसी के लोग हैं, मुझे जो इलेक्ट किए हैं, उनके बिहाफ से मैं बोल रहा हूँ। ठीक है, मेरे स्टेट में अगर 15 लाख है तो मैं उनके लिए बोल रहा हूँ। तो आई ड्रॉ माई अथॉरिटी फ्रॉम देम। अब बाद में जाकर के हम इसलिए हमने जो पारित किया कानून, उसको हम इम्प्लीमेंट नहीं कर सकता है क्योंकि वो किसी और का अधिकार को नुकसान पहुंचा रहे हैं। ये एक बड़ा डिबेट और डिस्कशन करने का विषय है। कल प्रधानमंत्री जी ने भी अपने फंडामेंटल ड्यूटीज के बारे में काफी लंबा जिक्र किया है। तो मैं ये सोचता हूं कि आज इस मौके पर राष्ट्रपति जी के मौजूद में हम सब यहाँ एकत्रित हैं और हम ये कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन डे का हम क्लोजिंग सेरेमनी, क्लोजिंग फंक्शन यहाँ मना रहे हैं। तो जब हम अपने अपने जगह जाएंगे तो इस सोच के साथ हम जरूर जाएंगे कि 75 इयर्स ऑफ इंडिपेंडेंस में हम कहाँ तक पहुँचे हैं, और जब हम आज़ादी का अमृत महोत्सव का 100 साल पूरा करेंगे तो हम कहाँ जाएंगे, कि हमारा वजह से कि संविधान को कोई नुकसान तो नहीं पहुँचा है। मैंने कल भी कहा है कि हमारा संविधान, भारत का संविधान को दूसरा माने ना माने, मैं तो मानता हूं कि दुनिया का सबसे अच्छा और सबसे खूबसूरत कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन है। तो इस कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन, इस होली बुक को और मजबूती से बनाए रखने के लिए, इसका सैंक्टिटी को बनाए रखने के लिए हम सबको कुछ ना कुछ आगे बढ़ के करना होगा। इसको अपने आप छोड़ देंगे कि कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन विल गाइड अस, इट मे नॉट बी इनफ। वी हैव टू एंश्योर that we follow the Constitution of India in letter and spirit. मैं इसलिए आज आपका जो इतने जो हमारा ऑनरेबल जजेस आए हैं देश भर से, आपका इस दिल्ली में इस मौके पर जब आए हैं तो ये सोच को अगर लेके जाएंगे तो आपके माध्यम से ये मैसेज देश के कोने कोने तक पहुंच जाएंगे। मैं फिर से ऑनरेबल सुप्रीम कोर्ट के चीफ जस्टिस रमन्ना साहब को धन्यवाद देता हूं कि उन्होंने ये शानदार कार्यक्रम का आयोजन किया और पूरे देश के जुडिशरी के जो पिलर्स हैं सबको एकत्रित करवाया, और साथ में माननीय राष्ट्रपति जी, प्रधानमंत्री जी और हम सब को भी यहाँ में आमंत्रित किया, बुलाया, ये मौका दिया। मेरे तरफ से मैं पूरे टीम को, ये ऑर्गेनाइजिंग जो कमेटी है, पूरे टीम को मैं बधाई देता हूँ, अभिनंदन करता हूँ, और फिर से मुझे यहाँ अपने 2 शब्द रखने का मौका दिया। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। जय हिंद।
Thank you, sir. May I now request the Honorable Chief Justice of India, Shri N.V. Ramana, to address the audience.
Honorable President of India, Sri Ramnath Kovind ji, Honorable Union Minister for Law and Justice, Sri Kiran Rijiju ji, my brothers, Justice Uday Umesh Lalit, Justice Ajay M. Kanvilkar, Justice D.Y. Chandrachud, Justice L. Nageswara Rao, brother and sister judges of the Supreme Court, Chief Justice and judges of different high courts, Sri S.P. Singh Baghela, Minister for State and Law and Justice, Manan Kumar Mishra, Chairman, Bar Council of India, Land Attorney General, Sri Tushar Mehta, Solicitor General, Barun Mitra, Secretary Justice, and other government officers, law officers, judicial officers, senior advocates, members of the Supreme Court Bar Association and Advocate on Record Association, media persons, other distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and law students. Yesterday itself, whatever I had to say, I have delivered my speech, but however, I have to review this 2 days program, what happened and what is my conclusions. So after these 2 days deliberations and participation in the 2 working sessions, we had a vibrant exchanges of the ideas. Celebrating Constitutional Day is a function every year it takes place, and the specialty of this year is that we have organized 2 days a function and participation from all parts of the country, all the Chief Justice and senior most judges are participated, apart from the two other organs of the state, the executive and the legislature also participated and exchanged their views. I am happy that all of you taken time and participated in this program. I am very happy that we expressed your views in some of the issues. The purpose of this meet is to highlight our dedication to the constitutional principles. Yesterday, I mentioned even the well-informed sections of the society are unaware of the importance of the Constitution. Although we are tirelessly working to uphold the Constitution, but there is still a need to spread more understanding about the Constitution. If people are unaware about their rights and entitlements, they cannot claim benefit from the same. People also need to know the scope and limitations of the roles ascribed to the different organs of the state. We need to clear the prevailing misconceptions. For example, many people in this country believe that it is the courts which make the laws. Another set of misunderstanding relate to the belief that the courts are responsible for liberal acquittals and adjournments. However, the truth is that the public prosecutors, advocates, and the parties all have to cooperate with the judicial process. Non-cooperation, procedural lapse, and faulty investigations cannot be blamed on courts. There are issues with the judiciary that need to be addressed. This is one of the reasons I am so glad that all the Chief Justices and senior judges in India were able to participate in this event. Yesterday, the Attorney General suggested some of the issues which are relating to the hierarchy of the judicial system and pendency of the cases. I am welcoming it. Now, this is the time the government has to consider such welcoming suggestions. Since independence, I do not think there has been a serious study to consider what exactly should be the structural hierarchy of the judiciary. Brother Justice Kanvilkar has rightly explained it is a neglected area, and he has also emphasized the need. I thank him. Another issue is that the legislature does not conduct studies or assess the impact of the laws that it passes. This sometimes leads to a big issue. The introduction of Section 138 of the Negotiable Instrument Act is an example for this. Now, the already burdened magistrates are further burdened by thousands of the cases. Similarly, rebranding the existing courts as commercial courts without creating a special infrastructure will not have any effect on the pendency. Therefore, the issues of pendency are multifaceted in nature. I hope the government takes into consideration the suggestions received during these 2 days and resolve the prevailing issues. Today, we are fortunate to have the presence of the Honorable President of India, Sri Ramnath Kovind ji. It was through his guidance that we thought of conducting this program in a grand way. It was the Honorable President who actually set the tone for this event. As a former lawyer, he was always championed the cause of upholding justice. He understands the difficulties and problems of the people at the grassroots level. During his tenure, he has supported our institutions in every way. He has always been very concerned about increasing access to justice. It was his vision that led to the recently concluded legal aid movement across India. He suggested the courts should translate judgments into Indian languages so as to reach the maximum number of people. The Honorable President has constantly encouraged the entry of women into the profession. He called for increased representation of women in the judiciary. His concern for the judiciary is also clear from the fact that he has been traveling all across the country and interacting with judges of high courts, which is very encouraging. The Honorable President's dedication to a vision, equality and justice will naturally trickle down to the conscience of the common man. His journey to being the President of India has been immense hope to the people of India. Now, I thank the Honorable Law Minister for mentioning that the government of India has granted around 9,000 crores for infrastructure. I request the Honorable Law Minister about creating a special purpose vehicle. Yesterday I mentioned the reason. Money is not the issue, funds is not the issue. Ultimately, the money or the funds sanctioned by the Government of India through central schemes has to reach and it has to spend. Unfortunately, some of the state has not giving their share of money as a contributing share, so no infrastructure schemes are taking up place. So this is the reason why I am strongly advocating for the National Judicial Infrastructure Corporation. I request once again, please consider this. At the same time, I am also requesting to expedite the filling of the vacancies also. Necessity is the mother of all inventions. The pandemic demanded us to transform the way we approach various issues. It has forced us to develop certain good practices which will support us in the days to come, although at a terrible cost. The Indian judiciary is one of the first institutions to shift to the online mode. This has opened a world of opportunities and we have witnessed innumerable benefits arising out of it. For this, I must thank all my brothers and sister judges, particularly Brother Justice Kanvilkar, Chandrachud, and Nageshwar Rao, who are the heads of various committees in the Supreme Court relating to technology, as well as the Chief Justice and the concerned judges of the High Court. I am happy Justice Lalit working hard, imparting NALSA schemes, and I wholeheartedly support his endeavors. We are fortunate to have enlightening company of our Brother Justice Kanvilkar. His commitment to the cause of access to justice is well known. Under his leadership, the Supreme Court Legal Service Committee has come to the rescue of many. I also thank to my two brother judges who have conducted insightful sessions, Justice Chandrachud and Justice Nageshwar Rao, earlier today on very relevant topics. Brother Chandrachud shared the session on technology and access to justice, a vision of the future, and as the chairperson of the E-Committee, he has done a wonderful job. In fact, this morning we have released an application on various Indian languages, a app which is useful to everyone. Brother Nageshwar Rao chosen a topic which adjusts introspection on our journey so far 75 years of independence, constitutional perspective and vision. It is important to carry out such introspection regularly to chart our path ahead. It is the collective efforts of highly committed and dedicated officers and staff of the Registry of the Supreme Court who made it possible to organize an event of this magnitude. I convey my special thanks to each one of them for all the hard work they have been putting in for making this event successful. The past 2 years have been very difficult for everyone. Many of our judges, judicial officers and staff have lost their lives. I can understand the amount of stress and suffering you must have faced in these tough times. However, these times have taught us to be ready for any future challenges, be it natural or otherwise. We must remember that whatever criticism or obstacles that we may encounter, our mission to render justice cannot stop. We have to march on in pursuing our duty to strengthen the judiciary and protect the rights of the citizenry. This sacred responsibility now rests upon your able shoulders. Thank you for giving this opportunity.
Thank you, sir. On the momentous occasion of the 72nd Constitution Day, may I now request the Honorable President of India, Shri Ramnath Kovind, sir, to deliver the valedictory address.
Chief Justice of India, Sri Justice N.V. Ramana ji, Union Minister for Law and Justice, Sri Kiran Rijiju, Sri Justice Uday U. Lalit, Sri Justice A.M. Kanvilkar ji, Dr. Justice D.Y. Chandrachud ji, Sri Justice L. Nageshwar Rao ji, Judges of the Supreme Court, Chief Justices and Judges of the High Courts, members of the Bar, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is an honor for me to be with you all and take part in the conference organized to celebrate Constitution Day. As the saying goes, well begun is half done. I am happy to learn that in 2 separate working sessions held here today, various issues have been taken up in right earnest to streamline the justice delivery system. The first session on technology and access to justice, a vision for the future, took up the issues related to the cost, speed, and accessibility of justice. Similarly, the second session, I am told, rightly focused on 75 years of independence, constitutional perspective, and vision. The discussions should certainly have devised means to bring the society more in tune with the constitutional ideals for a better future. As we are celebrating the 75th year of independence as Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, such deliberations on holding fast to constitutional norms and values are an ongoing project. But my mind goes back to the time when stalwarts of the freedom struggle got together to prepare this document. On the Constituent Assembly's first day of business, it was one of my illustrious predecessors and renowned philosopher, Dr. S. Radhakrishnan, who explained the context of the drafting of a constitution for India. Also, on a practical note, he added, I quote, "It is essential for any constitution which is drawn up to make all the citizens realize that their basic privileges, education, social, and economic are afforded to them, that there will be cultural autonomy, that nobody will be suppressed, that it will be a constitution which will be democratic in the true sense of the term, where from political freedom we will march on to economic freedom and equity. Every individual should feel that he is proud to belong to this great land." Unquote. Ladies and gentlemen, 3 eventful years later, they did build an incomparable foundation that rested on democratic principles and values inspired by our great traditions. The ideals we set for ourselves formed a tall order. The Constitution is the roadmap of our collective journey. At the core of it are justice, liberty, equality, and fraternity. In this forum, let us explore what it has to say about justice. In the very few and carefully chosen words, the preamble expands the notion of justice to include its social, economic, and political aspects. That is what the Constitution wants us to secure for all citizens of India. How far have we succeeded when compared to this ideal? Ladies and gentlemen, justice is the critical fulcrum around which democracy revolves. It gets further strengthened if the 3 institutions of the state, the judiciary, the legislature, and the executive, are in a harmonious existence. In the Constitution, each institution has its defined space within which it functions. Except for a brief phase of aberration, the journey of our republic has been glorious. Even during that phase, I vividly recall the comment of noted jurist Nani Palkhiwala, who famously spoke of, quote, "a few thousand square feet where a man may speak freely," unquote. He was obviously alluding to the courtrooms of India where freedom of expression is guaranteed. Ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed a credible achievement that people repose faith in the judiciary. And the Indian judiciary must be complimented for this well-earned achievement. As a former member of the bar, I always regarded it as a privilege to serve the cause of justice in my capacity as a lawyer. From this vantage position, I am also acutely conscious of obstacles in the path of justice delivery. In Indian tradition, judges are imagined as a model of rectitude and detachment, more akin to sthit pragya. We have a rich history of legions of such judges known for their utterances full of sagacity and conduct beyond reproach, which have become hallmarks for the future generations. I am happy to note that the Indian judiciary has been adhering to those highest standards. There is no doubt that you have set for yourself a high bar. Hence, it is also incumbent upon the judges to exercise utmost discretion in their utterances in the courtrooms. Indiscreet remarks, even if made with good intention, give a space for dubious interpretations to run down the judiciary. Let me recount a profound observation of Justice Frankfurter of the US Supreme Court in the Dennis versus United States case of 1951. He said, and I quote, "Courts are not representative bodies. They are not designed to be a good reflex of a democratic society. Their essential quality is detachment, founded on independence. History teaches that the independence of the judiciary is jeopardized when courts become embroiled in the passions of the day and assume primary responsibility in choosing between competing political, economic, and social pressure." Unquote. Ladies and gentlemen, at the risk of repeating myself, I would like to once again point to the cost of justice. In a developing country like ours, a very small section of the citizens can afford to knock on the doors of the courts of justice. From lower courts to the Supreme Court, it becomes increasingly difficult for an average citizen to seek redressal of grievances. Fortunately, there are, of course, individuals and also institutions that offer pro bono services. The Supreme Court, too, has taken praiseworthy steps in this direction. I wish to see increased access to legal aid and advisory services for all. It can take the form of a movement or the form of a better institutionalized mechanism. The other obstacle is the long pendency of cases, which I think many of the speakers have already narrated. All stakeholders appreciate the enormity of this challenge and its implications. I know much has been written about it, and pertinent suggestions have been made to address the issue. Yet, the debate continues and the pendency keeps increasing too. Ultimately, the citizens and organizations that have grievances bear the brunt. What can be done to quicken the pace of justice? The obvious answer is reform. But reform is an umbrella term under which different stakeholders wish to see different things. The suggestions and attempts so far show that the steps required for the purpose need to be broad-based to evolve a consensus about the reforms. The issue of pendency has ramifications for economic growth and development too. It is high time all stakeholders find a way out by keeping national interest above all. Technology can be a great ally in this process. The Supreme Court has taken numerous initiatives in this regard. The pandemic has hastened the adoption of information and communication technology in the domain of the judiciary. Young minds in this field, I am sure, will further propel the use of computers and the internet to serve the cause of justice and to serve the citizens. Here I would like to refer to the campaign by the National Legal Services Authority, that is NALSA, which is promoting an inclusive legal system to ensure justice to the disadvantaged sections of society through its wide network. Ladies and gentlemen, while we talk about the pendency of cases, another pertinent issue relates to appointments in the judiciary. I am of the firm view that the independence of the judiciary is non-negotiable. Without diluting it to the slightest degree, can a better way be found to select judges for the higher judiciary? For instance, there can be an All India Judicial Service which can select, nurture, and promote the right talent right from the lower levels to the higher levels. This idea is not new and has been around for more than half a century without being tested. I am sure that there could also be other, better suggestions for reforming the system. Ultimately, the aim should be to strengthen the justice delivery mechanism. Ladies and gentlemen, in August this year, as you know, 9 Supreme Court judges took oath of office. There were 3 women among them, which is a matter of pride, though, of course, much more needs to be done to improve gender balance in the judiciary. Equally noticed that day was the fact that it was for the first time in history that as many as 9 judges were being appointed. This ended a long period of uncertainty. What is of utmost significance here is that the top institutions of the Republic should be working in unison to serve the interest of justice, from which flows all tenets of a democratic and equitable society. That is what the founding fathers of our Republic had dreamed, and that remains our cherished collective objective. Ladies and gentlemen, we are legatees of an illustrious history in which legal luminaries not only shaped the national movement but also created a prototype of a selfless public figure. Right from the beginning, the judiciary consistently conformed to those highest standards of conduct while discharging its responsibility. In people's view, it is the most trusted institution. It pains me no end, therefore, to note that of late there have been cases of some disparaging remarks against the judiciary made on social media platforms. These platforms have worked wonderfully to democratize information, yet they have a dark side too. The anonymity granted by them is exploited by some miscreants. I hope this is an aberration and it will be short-lived. I wonder what could be behind this phenomenon. Can we collectively examine the reasons behind it for the sake of a healthy society? Ladies and gentlemen, Constitution Day is a great festival of our democracy. As we all know, we all holding the constitutional assignments derive the strength from the Constitution itself. It is a day to reiterate our debt to the known and unknown men and women who made it possible for us to lead our lives in a free republic. It is also a day to reiterate our commitment to keep walking on the path they forged for us. My congratulations to you all for organizing this conference on Constitution Day. My best wishes to all of you. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you, Honorable President Sir, for your words of inspiration. May I now request Honorable Shri Justice L. Nageshwara Rao, Judge Supreme Court of India, to propose a vote of thanks.
Honorable President of India, Sri Ramnath Kovind, Honorable Chief Justice of India, Sri N.V. Ramana, Justice Uday Umesh Lalit, Justice A.M. Khanvilkar, Justice D.Y. Chandrachud, my brother and sister judges of the Supreme Court, Attorney General for India, the Solicitor General of India, and the other law officers, members of the Supreme Court Bar Association and the Supreme Court Advocates on Record Association, senior advocates and other members of the association who are here, Secretary General of the Supreme Court, friends from print and electronic media, all other dignitaries of the dais, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Supreme Court of India, I extend my gratitude to the Honorable President of India for taking out time to grace the Constitution Day celebrations with his presence and his insightful thoughts. As the Constitution Day celebrations come to an end on the second day, it is time for Thanksgiving. I thank the Chief Justice of India for his guidance, the Law Minister for the unstinted cooperation, and the interest taken by him, as he announced today, for improving the infrastructure for better administration of justice. My colleague judges for the active interest taken and the tireless efforts of the registry to make these celebrations a success. The Chief Justice of the High Court and the other judges of the court who have come here, I should thank them, because without them, these celebrations would not have been complete. On this propitious occasion of the Constitution Day celebrations in the 75th year of independence, I would like to take the opportunity to remind ourselves, members of the judiciary, of our solemn bounden duty towards the Constitution. The judiciary's role as the custodian and watchdog of the Constitution is oft quoted and well recognized, but it is worthwhile to understand the true scope of this substantial charge. Thomas Jefferson, the great American statesman, had very rightly exhorted that a constitution and the institution it establishes, through majority will of the people, will bind the generation which it represents, but by no means can it be considered to dictate and impose unalterable burdens on future generations, nor reinforce the doctrine that the earth belongs to the dead and not the living. Breathing life and giving meaning to the Constitution is up to the succeeding generations. Therefore, if the Constitution was intended to provide a durable framework for governance in the midst of the continually evolving social and economic change, what then are we as judges entrusted to protect? It is constitutionalism, the spirit of the Constitution, underscored by the rule of law, that judges are required to uphold and bear allegiance to. On taking such oaths, judges as well as elected representatives and constitutional functionaries alike are expected to honor the core constitutional elements of constitutionalism and constitutional culture. Constitutionalism emphasizes on absence of any single center of unlimited or arbitrary power within a country. The neutrality envisaged in the constitutional scheme, the guiding factor for every constitutional authority in the performance of their duties and functions. In India's system of constitutional governance, it is the Constitution which is the supreme law of the land, resolutely embracing the critical concepts of fiduciary nature of public power and a system of checks and balances. While the Constitution may not expressly spell out these inherent notions and values, the Supreme Court has always been alive to their relevance and influences. The Court, time and again, reinvents and develops to explore the horizons of the rights enshrined in the Constitution and to reshape entitlements and limits, while paying homage to constitutional objectives as we leap through decades, witnessing the growth of the largest democracy and its constituents. In discharging this duty as a conscious keeper, it is expected that the judiciary would keep everyone within the limitations delineated in the Constitution. But that does not mean that judges are left free to wander like knight errants. These limitations are equally applicable to judges, who have to shoulder the dual responsibility of making each institution of our democracy confront its checks and balances, and also be mindful of our own. While this may seem a daunting task, we must remember that the mere existence of a constitution does not ensure constitutionalism. It is the political maturity and traditions of a people that impart meaning to a constitution, which otherwise merely embodies political hopes and ideals. Accordingly, judges should never lose sight of the fact that the people's word is the final word in governance, and the judges exercise their powers to achieve constitutional goals for the benefits of the people. While judges are expected to flawlessly carry out the strenuous task of being the bulwark against the erosion of constitutional principles, each one of us should be indoctrinated with the knowledge that the Constitution does not give untrammeled powers to anyone, including judges of all levels. I would like to conclude with the portentous words of Nani Palkiwala. The final guarantee of the survival of the citizens' rights is not the Constitution, but the personality and intellectual integrity of our judges. Jai Hind.
Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the national anthem.
The President of India delivering the valedictory address at the concluding of the two-day Constitution Day celebrations organized by the Supreme Court, foregrounding the values enshrined in our Constitution and their increasing relevance in today's India. The President having a brief word with the dignitaries on stage. And as he takes his leave,
तो आप देख रहे थे नई दिल्ली के विज्ञान